The message came in at 3:11 a.m., lighting up my phone in the middle of a dark room. "Miss you already, Em, just 2 more nights in Phoenix." I shot up in bed, heart pounding faster than normal. Not because of the message itself, but because of that eerie, familiar feeling. A kind of intuition I had tried to ignore for almost a year. Mason had the look of someone trustworthy. 35, tall, confident eyes, and the title of Director of Market Development at a medical equipment firm. We met at an industry conference in Austin and things turned personal quickly. Mason knew how to make a woman feel special. He picked up scale restaurants, remembered little things about me, and never missed a goodnight text, even when he was, supposedly, in meetings in Arizona or prepping a strategy pitch for the board. We'd been dating for nearly 10 months, yet I had only been to his downtown Houston apartment 4 times. Each visit had to be scheduled days in advance, and each time the place was spotless to the point of sterility. Like it had been prepped for a real estate tour. "Is this really your place?" I had once asked, trying to mask my unease. "Yeah, but I'm hardly ever here," he replied casually, "mostly traveling for work, or heading home on the weekends." Home? I'd never been invited. Never met his friends, never seen a single clue of his real life beyond the polished dinners and sweet-sounding words. His social media wasn't any more reassuring. No check-ins, no tags. Just a few posed headshots, a couple of work events, and an Instagram feed that was practically all landscapes and motivational quotes. I'd been suspicious for weeks, but every time I came close to confronting him, Mason had a way of steering the conversation elsewhere. A small gift, a perfectly timed text, or just a simple "I miss you" that disarmed me. Until early this morning, staring at that glowing message in the dark, I realized I couldn't lie to myself anymore. Something was off, and I needed the truth. I opened my laptop, fingers trembling slightly as I typed, "Texas Public Property Records." I vaguely remembered Mason mentioning he grew up in Clear Lake Shores, a small town about 40 minutes outside Houston. I didn't expect much, but after a few filters, one name popped right out. Mason W. Langford. A 2-story house at 17 South Shore Drive. I held my breath and clicked for details. Owner: Mason W. Langford and Jennifer K. Langford. Co-owners. Mailing address matched the property. Scrolling down to utility records. Electricity, water, trash. All under Mason and Jennifer's names. The ground felt like it vanished beneath me. My throat tightened. My heart raced. Jennifer Langford. Not a sister. Definitely not his mother. I knew exactly what this meant. I rushed into the bathroom and gripped the sink. Cold water splashed on my face did nothing to clear my head. The woman staring back at me in the mirror looked like someone who had sleepwalked into a wall of truth. I looked like I was wearing a mask. Smart, independent, suspicious. Yet I had spent nearly a year believing a man living a double life. I whispered to myself, "You know what you have to do." Nothing was coincidental. The work trips, the eerily clean apartment, the ghost-like social accounts. The emptiness every time he left. I grabbed my phone and pulled up months of texts, call logs, emails. Gradually a pattern formed like a map. Every other weekend, Mason disappeared, always with the same excuses. His next business trip? 2 days from now. No, not a trip. He was going home. To the house. With Jennifer. I clenched my fists, my eyes stayed dry. If he thought he was the only one who could stage a surprise, this time I'd be the one waiting in his living room. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. My heart pounded, but my mind was crystal clear. I knew that if I confronted Mason the usual way, with calls, tears, and demands, he'd play the same exhausted, misunderstood man. Not this time. This time, I didn't want words. I wanted proof. The kind no one could talk their way out of. And the only person besides me who deserved to hear it was Jennifer. I searched train routes. Clear Lake Shores didn't have a direct station, but I could ride down to League City, then take a cab. The whole trip? About an hour and a half, just enough time to prep my role. I printed a few old marketing documents from a previous job. Draft strategy files, blank forms, an unsigned contract. Nothing confidential, but enough to look official. I clipped them together, slid them into a navy binder and labeled it Langford Holdings, urgent signature required. I picked a beige office dress, flats, tied my hair in a neat bun, no bold makeup, no perfume. I needed to look completely harmless. That morning I took personal leave. No explanation necessary. I had wrapped up my latest deadline and my manager was used to overnight work followed by sudden disappearances to recharge. On the train south, I rehearsed every scenario in my head like it was a play. If Jennifer answered the door, what would I say? Hi, I'm with VisionMed's brand partnerships. Mason asked me to drop off urgent documents for signature. If she asked questions, I can wait in the car if that's better. But he was very clear. It needs to be signed this morning before it goes out to California. I repeated those lines like an actress in tech rehearsal. But deep down I could feel something harder forming beneath the nerves. Not fear. Resolve. My body already knew this was the final round and it was preparing for battle. I arrived at League City at 9:30 a.m. The sky was lightly overcast, bright enough to be calm but not blinding. I took a cab from the station and gave the address. 17 South Shore Drive. The house came into view. 2 stories, colonial roofline, soft gray paint, white picket fence and lavender bushes lining the walk. Too perfect for a lie to live in. I stepped out, adjusted my hair and clutched the binder like it was the only shield I had. 3 knocks on the door. I held my breath. A few seconds passed. Then it opened. And there she was, Jennifer Langford. She stood no taller than 5'2", with light brown wavy hair, wearing a buttoned white blouse and simple blue jeans. She didn't look flashy, but her eyes carried the depth of someone who'd lived through enough. Yes? She tilted her head, offering a polite yet cautious smile. I raised the folder to chest level. Hi, I'm Emma from VisionMed. Mason asked me to bring over a few urgent documents for signature. He mentioned he'd be working from home today. Jennifer blinked. He said what? That he needed to send these to a partner in San Diego by this afternoon. So, if it's all right, I could wait? She hesitated for a few seconds, then opened the door wider. Come in, would you like some tea? I nodded and stepped inside, and the moment the door clicked shut behind me, I knew I had walked straight into a story I once thought only happened in movies. Jennifer led me into a warm, classic space. The living room was covered in a dark carpet with a white stone fireplace across from us and a quiet landscape painting hanging above. The room smelled faintly of cinnamon, the kind of scent you only find in homes that are truly lived in. I'll put some tea on, make yourself comfortable, she said, walking toward the kitchen. I placed the folder on the coffee table in front of me, my eyes scanning the room out of instinct. I wasn't trying to snoop, but the truth was everywhere, laid out in plain sight. On the fireplace mantel stood a large wooden picture frame, Mason in a deep navy suit, standing beside Jennifer in a long-sleeved lace wedding gown. She looked younger then, but her smile was the same as moments ago, confident, unsuspecting. I swallowed hard. Next to it were photos of them camping, probably in Utah, and one where Mason hugged her from behind, both wearing knit hats, laughing under a golden sunset. I noticed a smaller frame next to a handwritten card. 10-year anniversary from the partner who's grateful every single day. 10 years? Mason and I hadn't even been together a full year. Yet I truly believed I was the only one he wanted a future with. Chamomile okay? Jennifer returned, holding 2 white teacups with gold trim, placing them on the table. That's fine, thank you. I gave a small nod, trying to keep myself steady. So which department are you with at VisionMed? She asked, sitting down. Mason rarely talks about work at home, so it's a bit surprising to hear someone from his office. I'm on the West Coast Partnerships team, I lied quickly. I only started a few months ago. That's probably why I haven't heard. He's pretty private. But I know he really values his colleagues, she said with a warm smile. Completely unaware she was sitting across from the woman her husband kissed goodbye just 3 days earlier. I raised the teacup to my lips, hoping my hand wouldn't shake. Jennifer continued. He said he was in Phoenix on business, but he's definitely coming back today. Every time he travels, he calls and says how much he misses being home. It's kind of a routine at this point. I nearly choked. Phoenix? 3 days ago, Mason told me he was flying to Seattle for a regional strategy meeting. He even sent me a picture of a conference room with a whiteboard, which now in hindsight was probably old. Jennifer stood up and walked over to a small table near the window. She flipped through a wall calendar, her finger brushing gently over neatly written notes in blue ink. Anniversary dinner, May 14th. Check fertility consult June 2nd. Weekend at Lake Travis tentative? I kept my face still. I had once asked Mason about having kids. He stroked my hair and said, "Not yet. Too much going on right now." Now I understood. He already had a life in motion. A wife, a plan for children, and I was just a branch, an add-on to a tree of lies he'd carefully cultivated. Jennifer returned to her seat, still smiling gently. "You live in Houston?" "Yes. Midtown, near Buffalo Bayou Park." "Oh, that's really close to the office. Mason always complains about the hour-and-a-half drive from Clear Lake." I let out a quiet, bitter laugh. I used to wonder why he never let me pick him up at home or drop him off at the airport. Now, everything fit. This wasn't his hometown like he claimed. This was his real home. With slippers by the door, a woman's shoe rack that fit perfectly, and a wedding photo proudly displayed like a silent declaration. I've belonged to someone for a long time. I tightened my grip on the folder resting on my lap. When I heard the garage door open from the back of the house, something in my chest stilled, like water gone flat just before the storm. Jennifer looked up. "That must be Mason." She stood up, cheerfully walking toward the hallway. I remained seated, back straight, eyes fixed on the stillness that had just been ripped open by the sound of an engine. I heard the door open, then footsteps, the clatter of keys hitting a tray. And after that, dead silence. "Babe?" Mason's voice caught in his throat as he stepped into the living room, his eyes landing on me like he'd just seen a ghost from his past. Jennifer smiled, unaware, and said, "Emma brought some urgent documents for you to sign." Mason stared at me, face pale, lips trembling. I lifted the teacup and spoke with steady calm. "Hi, Mason." Surprised? He froze in place at the doorway, eyes locked on me as if he'd stepped into a waking nightmare. The suit he wore was still perfectly pressed, his navy tie knotted with care. Too much care for someone who'd supposedly just gotten home from a work trip. In his hand was a black laptop case, the same one I saw next my bed less than a week ago. "Ernez, Emma, he stammered, voice noticeably weaker. Jennifer turned to look at him, then at me, confusion wiping the smile from her face. "You two know each other?" I placed the cup on the table, slowly stood up and turned to face Mason. My voice was clear. "Know each other? We've been in a relationship for almost a year. I thought you were in Phoenix." No one said a word. Only the ticking wall clock filled the air like a countdown to detonation. Jennifer blinked. "What?" Mason looked from me to his wife, his grip on the laptop case visibly shaking. "Jen, I can explain." I cut in. "He told me he was single, that he lived alone in an apartment downtown, that he needed time to focus on his career before settling down. And he also said," my voice cracked slightly, "that he loved me." Jennifer took a half step back. Her hand knocked over the teacup she was holding, sending it crashing to the tiled floor. The sound shattered the air, like a sudden jolt of pain bursting into the room. Mason moved forward, reaching for her, but she recoiled. "No, don't touch me. I need you to explain. Right now." "Jen, I didn't mean for it to get this far. Mason faltered, glancing at me, then back at his wife, clearly calculating who to lie to first. I took a step forward, eyes locked on him. "You told me your parents died when you were in college, that Thanksgiving made you feel empty because you had no family." Jennifer held her breath. "Mason, what is she talking about? You just called your mom 3 days ago." I just didn't want to talk about personal stuff with an outsider." "Outsider?" I let out a short laugh. "The outsider you took on a weekend trip to Galveston? The outsider you said you wanted to move in with?" Jennifer collapsed into a chair, clutching her head. "How long?" "I met him last October," I answered for him. "Almost 11 months, and not a week went by without a text from him saying he missed me." "Emma, don't make it sound like I wasn't serious." I turned sharply to him, my voice ice cold. "Serious? When you brought me to the apartment I thought was yours, did you think about Jennifer? When you told me not to call on Saturday nights because you were prepping a presentation, were you actually having dinner with your wife? Mason's face turned white. He opened his mouth but no sound came out. Jennifer looked up, eyes red but her voice terrifyingly calm. You told me you weren't ready for kids because of work stress, remember that? Mason slowly nodded. And at the same time you were planning a future with another woman? He said nothing. I looked at him one last time, a wave of pity and rage crashing inside me. I don't need an apology, I just want you to answer, truthfully, in front of both of us. Was there ever a moment when you were actually serious about me? He stayed silent. Jennifer whispered, more to herself than anyone else. You don't need to answer, silence is already an answer. A soft breeze slipped in through the cracked window, gently stirring the white curtain behind us. For a few seconds, the room froze. No escape left from the raw truth that hung heavy between us. I quietly reached down and picked up the folder from the table. Mason stepped toward me. Emma. I turned, calm but firm. My name is Emma Miller. I don't work for Vision Med. I wasn't here to get a contract signed. I'm the woman you deceived, just like you've been deceiving your wife all these years. Then I turned to Jennifer, no longer angry, only sincerely empathetic. I'm sorry. I didn't know. But I figured you deserved to. Jennifer gave a faint nod, still clutching her chest like holding herself together. And Mason? He just stood there, like a statue, caught between two women who had once believed in him completely. The doorbell rang. All three of us, Jennifer, Mason, and I, turned toward the hallway. Jennifer's eyes were still swollen, but her voice was steady, even cold. Did you invite someone else over today? Mason shook his head, breath heavy. But the guilt in his eyes made the answer meaningless. Jennifer walked to the door. I remained still, my hand lightly gripping the edge of the folder that now served no purpose other than being a prop in this dramatic unmasking. A voice rang out from outside. Hi, I'm Bailey, Mr. Mason's assistant. He asked me to bring over some documents from the office. I caught the word, the same one Mason had mentioned countless times. The one who used to message me back when I called late at night. The one who once said, my boss is in a meeting, even though the background music was classic jazz? Jennifer turned to look at Mason, her lips pressed tight. She said nothing to me, simply opened the door wider. Bailey stepped in. A woman in her mid-20s, dressed in a gray pencil skirt, her brown hair neatly tied back, holding a black leather bag and a stack of documents. Is Mr. Mason home? She asked, scanning the room. Then her eyes landed on me. Her stomach twitched. I saw it clearly. The flicker of recognition in her face. Like she was staring at someone she'd seen before. But not here. Bailey turned awkwardly toward Mason, her expression shifting. No longer professional, no longer the assistant delivering papers. Mason? She said, this time more softly. Jennifer gently closed the door behind her. Looks like you and my husband know each other too, huh? Bailey set the documents on the table, her arms hanging at her sides, her face pale. I'm sorry. I didn't know he was still living with his wife. I looked at Mason. He avoided the eyes of all three women in the room. What did he tell you? Jennifer asked, her voice calm. Bailey swallowed. That they've been separated for over a year? That they still lived in the same house because the property division wasn't finalized, and that he wanted to start over. Jennifer let out a faint laugh, not mocking, just hollow. I pulled out a chair and sat down. When did you start seeing Mason? Bailey hesitated. Around May. Jennifer turned to me. I nodded slightly. In May, he took me on a 3-day trip to Lake Charles, said it was a business trip that needed a bit of relaxation. Bailey's eyes widened. He told me he was in San Antonio signing contracts. The three of us looked at each other. A long pause, then Jennifer pulled out 2 chairs at the dining table. Let's sit. Let's go through everything. Mason opened his mouth, but Jennifer raised her hand. Sit down. This isn't a courtroom where you get to defend yourself. Bailey unlocked her phone. I followed. Within minutes, 2 phones slid across the table. Scrolling through messages, call logs, photos. Evening of June 9th, Bailey said. He texted that a meeting ran late. Couldn't make it to my place. I swiped through my screen. Evening of June 9th, he booked a hotel with me in Houston. Jennifer got up, walked to the cabinet by the fireplace, and pulled out a small planner. That day, she flipped it open, he said he'd be home late for an end-of-quarter meeting at the office, so I brought dinner to his study. Bailey exhaled. We were all deceived, I said firmly, not just emotionally, but in trust. Every detail, every piece of our lives was arranged by him like a schedule. Neat, precise, calculated. Jennifer clutched the planner tighter. I used to think I knew this man. I believed him when he said, I just need time. Bailey looked up, eyes red. He said he'd introduce me to his family once things settled down. I looked at Mason, just like when you told me, I don't want to go public too soon because I want to protect what we have. Jennifer stepped toward Mason, her gaze like a blade. And what about me? What was I in your master plan? The housekeeper? The investor? Or the first one you'd deny if it all blew up? Mason said nothing. The only thing he could manage was to lower his head, hands trembling in his pockets, not a single excuse left that didn't reek of lies. We, 3 women who hadn't known each other an hour ago, now sat at the same table, not sharing memories but stitching together pieces of the same deception. The air in the room was thick with silence as we realized. Mason had lived 3 parallel lives, like a man managing project teams. I was about to stand up when my eyes caught the black leather briefcase Mason had left on a side chair near the door. The gold-embossed company logo shimmered under the light. Part of a document stuck out. I didn't touch it, but Jennifer had reached her limit. You made me look like a fool, she said, walking swiftly toward the case. We co-signed our accounts, Mason. Don't think I have no right to touch this. She unlocked it. Mason lunged forward, grabbing her arm. Jen, don't. Bailey stood up abruptly. What are you hiding? I stepped closer, my voice firm. Let her go. Jennifer yanked hard, finally pulling the briefcase out of Mason's grip. She flung it open on the table. Inside was a stack of financial records, some bank letters, and one set of statements clearly labeled Joint Checking, Jennifer K. Langford and Mason W. Langford. Jennifer flipped through the pages, her eyes widening as she read the transactions. Mason, she said, stunned. You've been withdrawing $2,000 every month and sending it to something called Westview Holdings? We don't have any investments under that name. Mason hesitated. It's a private savings account for a startup project. I leaned in for a closer look. One line read clearly, Recurring Task Force, Avalon Apartments, $2,200 per month. My stomach dropped. Avalon is the apartment complex he's taken me to multiple times. Said it was the place he rented between business trips. Told me the company covered it. Jennifer looked up, her eyes now burning red but dry. And you used our money to pay for that? Mason snatched at the paper, but I was quicker. I pulled out my phone. You should take photos of all of this, I said to Jennifer. Now's not the time to show mercy. Bailey pulled out her phone too. I want copies. He promised me equity in that startup if I left my current job. If it's all a lie, I need proof. Jennifer snapped each page one by one, her movements cold and precise. Then she turned and walked over to a drawer near the fireplace. When she came back, she was holding a small voice recorder. Remember this, she said, placing the device on the table and pressing record. You used to practice presentations with it. Now it's my turn. Mason took a step back. You've lost your mind. I've never been clearer, Jennifer replied. Now tell me, how much money did you pull from our joint account to fund that secret life? It wasn't for me alone, Mason tried weakly. Then for who? For Emma? For Bailey or someone else? Jennifer's voice turned ice cold. I spoke up, each word sharp. If you don't tell us, the court will make you. Mason looked around like a cornered animal. You 3 can't gang up on me like this. I have rights. You have the right to remain silent, Bailey cut in, but we have evidence, and my lawyer is going to be very interested in those promises you made. Jennifer picked up her phone and opened her banking app. I'm freezing the joint account and calling my father. He's a senior manager at this bank. Any transfers made after today will be blocked. I'm on the title of this house, Mason shouted. You can't. So am I, Jennifer replied without flinching. And I have documentation showing misuse of marital assets, according to Clause B in the prenuptial agreement. You signed it yourself. This behavior could result in forfeiture of your ownership in a divorce. Mason's face went pale. I stepped closer, my tone calm but resolute. There's no one left here for you to manipulate. Everything you built on lies is crumbling. Bailey looked Mason straight in the eye, her voice steady now. I've saved every message you ever sent, every promise, every time you asked for account info to invest. Jennifer stopped the recording. That's enough. We have what we need. Mason backed up and slumped into a chair, like the life had been drained from him. No more arguments. No more lies. Just a quiet collapse. Jennifer shut off the recorder, then stood and pulled her phone from her pocket. Her voice wasn't loud, but every word landed like the final nails in a coffin Mason could no longer escape. If you're not out of this house within 5 minutes, she said, I'll call your mother. And then your office. Jen, you don't have to do this, Mason pleaded, his voice cracking as if still clinging to some hope. Don't have to? Her laugh was hollow and chilling. You lived 2 lives, 3 lives, maybe more, and you think you still deserve leniency? He stepped toward her, both hands reaching out in desperation. I know I messed up, but we can. There is no we, she cut him off. The moment you used my money to fund your lies, you ended this marriage. I stood up, my eyes never leaving Mason. I once loved this man. Once believed his silences came from work pressure. Turns out, they were voids filled with guilt, masked by carefully timed smiles. As for me, I said, I won't be needing to see you again. Emma, please, don't leave like this, he turned to me, clinging to his last thread. You ended it, Mason, I replied calmly. I just hadn't realized it yet. Bailey stood in silence for a moment, then pulled a small USB drive from her bag. I backed up all our office conversations. Every time you emailed confidential files to your personal account. I'll be sending everything to my lawyer. Bailey? Mason could barely breathe. You didn't just betray love, you let lies bleed into business. And you forgot I'm not a fool. Jennifer opened the door. The air outside was sharp and cold. Mason Langford, you have 2 minutes. He stood frozen. No more excuses, no more defenses. I'm changing every lock today, Jennifer continued. And I'm filing for divorce this week. The joint bank account has been frozen. Call your lawyer if you want, but with what I've got, I doubt you can still afford one. No one laughed. Every word was a hard truth, immovable. I grabbed my bag and walked out of that house without looking back. The late afternoon light slanted across the steps, and lavender still drifted from the fence. I realized I had once dreamed of a home like that, of a man like that. I never thought both would turn out to be illusions. I stepped to the curb just as the Uber I'd ordered 30 minutes earlier pulled up. Before getting in, I turned back toward Bailey. She nodded. Thank you for coming. If you hadn't, I probably wouldn't have snapped out of it. It wasn't because of me, I said. It's because we deserve the truth. She gave a small smile, just enough to let me believe she would be okay. That evening, when I returned to my apartment in Houston, I didn't turn on the lights right away. I sat on the sofa, phone in hand, staring at a thread full of Mason's messages. No apologies, just muddled half-explanations, half-pleas. I deleted them all. The next day I got a message from Jennifer. I changed all the locks. Lawyer appointment on Monday. Thank you for everything. I replied with a short line. You're stronger than you think. And when I opened my laptop to finish some leftover work, I knew one thing for certain. I had stepped out of that darkness with a calm Mason would never know again. 6 months later, I got an email from Jennifer. The subject line held only 3 words. Update if you care. I opened it while sitting in my usual coffee shop near Eleanor Tinsley Park, the spot where I like to work on company reports after hours. Yeah. It's finally over. The court approved every divorce request and awarded me the bulk of our assets. The house, the remaining savings, even the SUV Mason secretly tried to transfer to his cousin. All of it was added to the list of things he had to give up to avoid trial. I paused, exhaled, not because I pitied Mason, but because it was strange. How someone who once seemed in control of everything could collapse so quickly when exposed to the light. Emez lost his job too. Turns out Bailey wasn't the only one who kept emails and documents. HR confirmed a few questionable expenses tied to misuse of client entertainment funds. They didn't fire him immediately, but put him on unpaid leave. A month later he resigned. I remembered that flash of panic in Mason's eyes when Jennifer mentioned his company that day. Now I understood. Men like him aren't afraid of being left. They're afraid of being exposed. Bailey enrolled in a forensic accounting program. Can you believe it? She said if she had to go through pain, she might as well turn it into a skill. I smiled. Bailey had been the youngest among the three of us, yet she'd always had this sharp intuition. Maybe this was her way of turning ruin into a shield. Not for revenge, but protection. For herself, and for other women too. As for me, I sold the house, moved into an apartment complex near downtown Houston, closer to my parents, the public pool, and the gym I always dreamed of having time to use. Closer to the little things. And, if your offer still stands, I'd love to have coffee. I typed back a short reply. Coffee sounds perfect. See you this Saturday. We met on a fresh April morning at a rooftop cafe overlooking the Houston skyline. The air was cool, the sun still gentle, and steam curled from the latte in front of me. Jennifer arrived 2 minutes late, her hair shorter than I remembered, her eyes no longer guarded but calm, like someone who had finally loosened a knot that had choked her for a decade. You look different, I said, smiling. Different good? She asked, voice light but grounded. Better, and lighter. We talked like two women who had been through the storm and come out whole, though changed. There was no need to mention Mason anymore, no judgment. We simply shared stories about work, the books we were reading, and the places we hoped to visit. I thought I'd never be able to trust anyone again, I admitted. I used to be afraid of myself, Jennifer said, afraid that I'd become foolish without even realizing it. But then I learned something. Trusting isn't the mistake. Trusting the wrong person is. As we got ready to leave, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small box wrapped in brown craft paper. I got this for you. I opened it to find a silver compass pendant strung on a delicate chain. I have one just like it, Jennifer said, pulling a matching chain from beneath her collar. I had them made as a pair. To remind myself that even if we get lost along the way, we can always find our direction again, from within. I clasped the chain around my neck, feeling the cold pendant rest against my skin. Thank you, I whispered. Not just for this, but for not shutting me out, on a day when it would have been easy to see me as the wrecking ball. Ma, Jennifer looked at me, you opened the door I was most afraid to face. And sometimes the truth doesn't show up to destroy, it shows up to set us free. We hugged before leaving the cafe, no more words needed. That evening, when I returned home, I took off the necklace and placed it on the bedside table next to the journal I use whenever emotions swell too high. I looked at it for a long time, not because I felt regret, but because I knew, deep down, this wasn't the end. This was the beginning. And this time, the compass guiding me was mine, no one else's. Emma's story is a powerful reminder that while truth can hurt, it can also be the beginning of freedom. In real life, many people remain stuck in relationships built on lies, out of fear of being alone, or hope that someone will change. But like Emma, when we choose to face it, to walk away and place our trust in ourselves, we reclaim our direction. No one can steer our lives if we hold tight to the compass within. Our courage, our intuition, and our true worth. What are your thoughts on Emma's choice and how each character faced the truth? Share your reflections in the comments below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful real-life stories about family and healing.